Family, friends, and fans of America's Got Talent are mourning the apparent suicide of a teen contestant. 17-year-old Emily Gold appeared on the TV talent show alongside the Los Osos high school dance team. It was high energy, full of joy, and got a standing ovation from the crowd and the judges. That was just last month, but this week, her parents sharing on Instagram that Emily died last Friday, writing, quote, "Our hearts have a hole the size of the universe right now." San Bernardino County coroner confirming she died by suicide. Emily's death is completely shaking up her community and shedding light on the important issue of teens and suicide. So joining us now is clinical neuropsychologist Dr. Judy Ho. Thank you so much for joining us on this topic, and good to see you again. The CDC, this report is alarming. Last year, 20% of high school students seriously considered suicide and 10% attempted it. So what is causing them to even consider suicide? Is this something that is new, or do we just know more about it now?
Hey, Alex, good to see you again, too. I think that we know a lot more about it now. I think that people are more aware. I think that people are more willing to share these thoughts. There's definitely a generational shift about talking about mental health a bit more, so that maybe, you know, these children's parents' generation, they weren't saying it, and that may have still been a factor for them. But I do think that there are some forces right now that make it even harder for a teenager to navigate their mental health issues. And because they're a teenager, their brains aren't fully formed, they're a bit more impulsive, and they're really thinking in the moment, and they can't see down the line that maybe this suffering's not going to continue for days on end. In that moment, they just say, well, maybe it's just easier if I'm not alive.
So I want to make sure I'm very clear to our viewers that we don't know exactly what was going on with Emily Gold, but putting that aside, high school females report having poor mental health at a higher rate than their counterparts. So are there different signs to watch out for in girls versus boys?
I think that some of the reasons why girls won't always be first identified as having suicidal ideation is that it tends to be a lot more covert than their male counterparts. And of course, there's individual differences, but what we see between these two genders is that with men or with young teen boys, they tend to act out more. So then there's going to be more of an alarm signal for the parents, the teachers, because it's not just that they're quietly brooding to themselves. You know, they're going to be acting out more in physical ways. They're going to state out loud more their anguish. And just in general, I think that some of this is social cultural. You know, females, they just tend not to be so overt with those warning signs. So they may just start spending a lot more time alone in their rooms. They may keep odd hours, not go to sleep at the same time, start to shy away from their friends, not sit and eat at the dinner table. But you don't really know about what's going on in their inner monologue.
And I believe we talked about this last time, where you just don't, it's so hard as a parent to decipher between, okay, what is normal teen behavior and then what is something that is obviously more treacherous, lurking under the surface. But parents and grandparents, they can find talking about mental health or suicide uncomfortable or even difficult, depending on the generation. But we know it's important. So help us kind of change our mindset here and get comfortable. How should we prepare for those tough conversations that we will eventually have?
It's such a great question, Alex. And I think that sometimes when you see your children or grandchildren suffering, you just want to take it away. And sometimes you end up being dismissive on accident. You know, you'll say, well, just don't think about that. Or why would you think that? You know, everything is so great in your life. And actually, that ends up being very invalidating for the teen or the young adult that's trying to share this information with you. And also there's more shame. Like, yeah, you know what? I guess my life is pretty good. So why would I have these thoughts? And it actually makes their depression and hopelessness worse. So no matter what your personal opinions are and maybe your own discomfort, I think it's just most important that you can just stay with the conversation, be present-minded, and take an open perspective where you're asking questions, but not in a way where you're drilling down on them. You're just saying, okay, thank you for sharing this with me. Please tell me more so I can understand. Take that attitude of wanting to learn and of curiosity. Let them share. You don't actually have to share anything on your side other than just, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm trying to understand. And then I think a really good question to ask is, what do you need from me in this moment, right? Instead of telling them what you think they need, we might have our own ideas.
Right.
They may have a completely different idea. So how can I support you now that you've shared this with me? I think that that's a really good open-ended question so that the teenager can feel like they can share with you and that they're not being judged for having these thoughts.
And I'm sure they then feel like they have a little bit of control in an area where they feel so out of control. And that's kind of part of the reason why they're there in the first place. Dr. Judy Ho, thank you so much for joining us and giving us some good tips and advice for parents out there. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We want to remind our viewers that help is available. If you need someone to talk to or someone you know is having these types of thoughts, call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988 or just text the word HOME to the crisis text line, and that is 741-741. Help is available 24/7. We'll be back after this.